Hey, World War II wargame fans. This is an introduction to Fighting Flattops, which is a turn-based, pure strategy game on the web for free. Doesn't cost you anything to play, and it's a lot of fun. It's not a shoot-'em-up first-person shooter kind of game. It's a completely strategy-based game, and you're always playing against another player. You're never playing against a computer or an AI. And turn-based means, for me, it's one of the big things I like about the game, actually. Each turn is an hour, and you can choose scenarios that take 3 or 4 days. You can make the turns go automatically at nighttime and things. But for the most part, you're going to spend a set of actions each hour. So let's show you how to do that with a battle. I'm going to choose the Battle of the Coral Sea, which I think was kind of an interesting battle from a World War II history perspective anyway. Neither side really knew what they were doing, so there were a lot of mistakes made. And the big goal in this scenario is find your opponent and get to them before they can get to you. So search is a big component in outthinking your opponent. If you found them and they haven't found you, that's a big advantage for you. Now you can choose to play the way the scenario was in World War II, or you can choose to set things up differently in the same area. I'm going to choose to set things up differently. I'm going to choose the United States because they tactically anyway lost the Battle of the Coral Sea, and then I'm going to say go. So what it takes you now is a place where you can set up your forces. You've got some icons at the top and you've got a map. And the map shows you where your forces are. And in the beginning, you can set them up anywhere you want within your allowed area for your ships. And you can set your submarines up with some restrictions on them being in the opposing forces area. So at this time, it's a good time to think about a strategy for this battle. What are you going to do? And how are you going to set your forces up? So my strategy for this battle is going to be to move my forces towards the left, the west of my allowed area on the map, and to attack into that sea and then north so that I can get support from the land bases and move north into that area that's the Japanese area. If I move out north immediately, I will be closer to his bases and far from mine, so I won't have support. So at the top, we've got 7 icons that we can use. There is the battleships, the map you've seen. The task force area is where you control your ships. This area, which is the flight area, is where you control your air groups. Your air groups are how you group aircraft together so you can control them without having to control each one. And you can send them on missions. The next one is the land bases. Then it's your carriers, your carrier groups, your submarines, and your instructions. It's worth noting that pilots are just people. They're not 100% accurate. So if they're flying along, they may give you reports that are not completely correct. There may be cloud cover. They may just have got a glimpse. They are also not that accurate in reporting attacks. They tend to exaggerate a little bit. So you might get an attack, 6 aircraft were destroyed, when in fact, let's say 3 of them were damaged and are going to be repaired. Finally, I think it's worth mentioning that your resources in this game are fixed. It's not that they're completely fixed, it's that in World War II Pacific, there was no way to get resupplies to a base in just a space of 3 days. Again, let's look here at the tactics. The strategy is to go up, first west, then north, and to attack with some bombers. I've got some bombers in Australia, and I can attack. Now, you might think that the thing to do if I'm attacking is to fly the bombers over Port Moresby, which is my base on the island, and then pick up some fighters and go and attack. But that's not actually what happened in World War II. So what I'm going to have to do is fly them over, land them there, and expose them to attack, refuel them, and then send them up as a mission with fighter coverage. That's really the only way that I can do it. And I think that's worth noting that a lot of annoyances in this game are there because that's the way it was in World War II. They didn't have the great communications. It was only really late in the war that they started that kind of combined operation. And this Battle of the Coral Sea occurred much earlier in the war. So what I'm going to do now is place my submarines in a screen as my main submarine tactic. And my second submarine tactic is to place them near 1 or 2 bases so that I can bombard the bases. Bombing a base from a submarine isn't a particularly effective strategy, but hey, it annoys the opponent and anything to slightly give yourself a little bit of an advantage. It also helps you spy on them. There are some rules about how I can place submarines. I can't place them within 50 miles of each other, And when the game starts, they're all going to be in dived position. So I'm going to have to move them up from dive position so that I can have them do some watching and be a patrol element for me. When you start, there are a couple of things you have to do right away. One of them is to also set up a combat air patrol, which is CAP. So let's go and take a look at the aircraft. I have some bombers and some fighters in Charters Towers, which is in Australia. And each airbase has a maximum limit as to how many craft I can put up. So I can't launch everything all at once. The ground crews don't allow it because there's just not enough of them. And I do want to talk a little bit about New Caledonia. New Caledonia in this scenario has these awesome aircraft, the PDY Catalina. Fantastic patrol aircraft. My strategy for this game is not to send them straight on patrol. They're a little far away. They've only got a range of 2,000 miles, which is the longest range of almost any aircraft in World War II, but is not enough for this game, this scenario. I'm going to send them to another airbase, which means they're going to be out of action on day one. It's a risk, but we'll see how it goes. So let's go and take a look. They're on the bottom right over there, and I'm going to fly them across to Australia. Again, this is one of the advantages of having a base strategy where you link close to your bases. All right, so now we've done that. Let's actually go and do some attacking and start giving it to the opposition. I have a bunch of bases that I can take a look at here, and one of those bases is right nearby. Port Moresby is very close, so I'm going to launch some aircraft. Now I've got 50 aircraft, but again, I can only launch 45 because that's all the ground crews can handle, and I don't want to launch all of them anyway because then they'd all land at once and I'd be exposed while they're refueling. So I'm going to launch 15 as some combat air patrol, which means they just fly around in circles above the base, checking to see if there's any opposition. If you have an attack and you don't have any combat air patrol, you're really not in a good position. The other thing that I can do is I can have them as okay, so I click form air group and it tells me that they've been launched, and I can go to the map icon. But what I'm going to do now is just go and take a look at the air groups. It was empty, but now I've got an air group, and it tells me that they're combat air patrol for Port Moresby. I can change their mission, but there are some risks associated with changing a mission halfway through. They're just less able to execute the second mission. So you don't usually want to do that, but you can instruct them to land. Sometimes you want to make them land right away. All right, now let's go and do an attack. Now, Port Moresby's only got fighters, so I can only go and strafe the other base. But again, it's always worth just making their life a little bit harder and maybe engaging some of their combat air patrol and seeing what's on the base. The fighters can have a little look around and tell me how many aircraft are on the base, and that can help me choose some targets later on. So I'm going to choose to attack Ley, which is the nearest base. I got to tell you, he must be expecting it because I'm right next door, but that doesn't mean it's not a good idea, and it helps me have a little look around. And that's the only action that I'm going to do for this phase. So I'm going to click next phase and then wait. Remember, it's a turn-based game, so I'm going to wait for my opponent, then read the reports. So that's all I've got for you guys for the introduction. I hope this has given you a head start in how to get going with what is a really cool game. Really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun, and it's really easy to play, which, for somebody who's quite busy is a big advantage.